Welcome to another episode of The Evaluation Couch, the podcast where we talk about career growth and the field of evaluation. This is your host, Maria Montenegro. Hello, everyone. Today, I'm very excited to have an evaluation consulting business that will talk about their experience as a B Corp. A B Corp is a company certified for using business as a force for good, meeting high standards of social and environmental impact, transparency, and accountability. A B Corp balances purpose and profit, committing to benefiting not just shareholders, but also workers, communities, and the planet. I actually knew about B Corp way before I knew that there was an evaluation consulting organization that was a B Corp. And this is the kind of certification and kind of thing that I thought just wasn't part of the evaluation field. So I was very excited a few years ago when I saw that Cathexis Consulting was actually a B Corp. And I've been curious to learn more about them and their journey for a while. So I'm super excited about today's episode. And to provide some context to this conversation, I am going to read the B Corp Declaration of Interdependence, just so that you get a little bit more of a feel about what the companies that decide to pursue this certification have in common and what they stand for. We envision a global economy that uses business as a force for good. This economy is comprised of a new type of corporation, the B Corporation, which is purpose-driven and creates benefit for all stakeholders, not just shareholders. As certified B Corporations and leaders of this emerging economy, we believe that we must be the change we seek in the world, that all business ought to be conducted as if people and place mattered, that through their products, practices, and profits, businesses should aspire to do no harm and benefit all. And to do so requires that we act with the understanding that we are each dependent upon another and thus responsible for each other and future generations. If you have similar motivations for being in the field of evaluation as me, you probably heard a lot of content in that declaration that resonated with you and what you stand for as well. So now let me tell you a little bit more about Cathexis. Cathexis is a full-service independent evaluation firm based in Canada. They provide expert utilization-focused evaluations that help organizations change for the better. I invited Cathexis to be part of this podcast to share about their journey as a certified B Corporation. So today I'm being joined by Melissa McGuire, who is a partner at Cathexis Consulting, and Liz Martin, who is a senior consultant. And before we get started and learn more about their journey, I will ask them to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Melissa. I've been an evaluation consultant in the private sector for over 20 years, providing evaluation support to government and non-for-profits. I think over the course of my career, I've done hundreds of evaluations so far.
Great. Thank you so much. And Liz, can you tell us a little bit more about you?
Nice to be here, Maria. Thanks for having me. So I'm Liz. I'm an evaluator who's been working in evaluation in consultancies for almost 15 years. I'm a wife, an aunt, I'm a sister, and I'm also deeply obsessed with The Traitors on TV. So if you ever want to talk about that show, I've watched every iteration of it and would love to chat about it.
That's very helpful to know. I have not watched that show, but if I ever do, I know who to call when I need to debrief. Thank you so much for being here today. I am very excited that you're here to share about your journey with your consulting organization, and very happy to increase visibility to the fact that there are evaluation consulting firms that are B corporations. So can you share about Cathexis Consulting?
Sure. We are now close to 25 years old, and we've specialized in evaluation for that whole time. We started very small, grew quite large, and then contracted again. We found that being a smaller consultancy allowed us a little more control over the kind of company we wanted to be, having the culture we wanted, and doing the work we would like to do most. We've been in business for almost 24 years doing evaluation here in Canada.
Cathexis is a B corporation, and I'm really looking forward for you sharing more about that journey. But for those of our audiences that don't know what that is, B Corp is a certification for organizations that are meeting certain social and environmental performance standards. So it recognizes organizations that are going above the status quo in terms of running a business. I'm curious if you can share whether you've had any memorable experiences that have motivated you to run your business in a way that aligns with the requirements for a B corporation.
Sure. I joined Cathexis about a year before we started pursuing B Corp certification. So it was in my first year at Cathexis that I was really coming to understand the organization deeply and its values and how it worked. And I really could see, even when I was applying to work at Cathexis, that it was a fundamentally different organization. And I really came to understand that as I was working at Cathexis. As a new staff member, I think one of the things I didn't really have a grasp of was how Cathexis might fit into the bigger sphere and the bigger landscape of doing business. And I think because of that, I didn't always have the language to talk about who we are and how we're different and how we do business differently. When a colleague mentioned B Corp and suggested, we consider certifying, I started looking into it and we were talking about it as a team. I was initially skeptical about it. I thought this might just be some marketing bunk similar to greenwashing or some really vague virtue signaling. I wasn't sure about it, but as I looked into it, the Declaration of Interdependence really spoke to me, especially its emphasis on changing the way the global economy operates and changing capitalism from within. I just thought, yes, that's exactly the kind of movement that I want to be a part of. And if I, at my small company in this small space, can see myself fitting into that bigger movement, that's something I really want. And I could see how being part of this network and this community could help to give me the kind of language to be able to talk about my purpose and the purpose of my work and the work that we're doing together as a team. So that really spoke to me and really made me want to consider the B Corp certification really seriously. I think because of that, we started talking seriously as a team, decided to move forward with exploring it and pursuing the certification.
Can you share a little bit more about what that process entailed? I've also heard, Melissa, that it's a quite lengthy process, that it is rigorous in terms of everything that they ask you. What was that process like for you? What learnings did you have from going through the process?
Yeah, it's a really interesting and it's a really good process to go through, I think, for any organization, even if they're not thinking they'll ultimately become a B corporation, because the assessment itself is a really comprehensive tool, and it covers a number of areas that you assess your company against and has a series of questions. So there's a whole area of governance and asking you questions about your policies and practices that pertain to your mission and ethics and accountability and transparency that really get you thinking. Like, maybe you're doing some of those things and the answer is yes, we do all of these things, but maybe there are ideas in there that you hadn't thought of. So there's governance. There's workers is another area of questions where you are asked questions about how you contribute to your employees' financial, physical, professional, and social well-being. There's a whole section on community and how your company contributes to the economic and social well-being of the communities that you operate in. There's a piece on environment, and it's really about overall environmental stewardship. There's a piece on customers and how you create value for the clients of your services. So each of these big buckets of questions have a series of items, many items. And as I say, even if you're not doing these things, it can spark ideas for what you could be doing. So you go through that whole process, answer the questions, and then it's not just you answer the questions and that's it. You then have to provide evidence. So you need artifacts proving all of these things. If you've said you have certain benefits for customers or for employees, you need to then provide evidence that backs that up, either in your financials or other places. And sometimes you do things and you realize you haven't documented it. And maybe you need to formalize that process and formalize a policy about it so that you do have evidence that this is something we do and we're committed to it. And so it's this process and cycle of identifying the things you do coming up or identifying things you don't that you'd like to do, and then formalizing and documenting it and providing evidence of it. So that's why I say overall it's a very demanding process, which is maybe a good thing because it's not just a greenwash, but it's also good for organizations even who aren't going to become B Corps. It allows them to think about maybe some practices that they might want to integrate, even if they don't become a B Corp. And then, of course, you have to
Okay.
recertify every 3 years.
Thank you for sharing the process. Melissa, I'm curious about as you go through that process, which you do every 3 years, what are some aspects that you think are overlooked in a traditional evaluation consulting organization and that are a requirement for a B corporation?
Requirements of B Corp certification, in many ways, it's like a mindset shift, right? You stop thinking of yourself as just an evaluation consultancy that delivers evaluation work. You now start to see yourself as, yes, an organization that delivers good evaluation work ethically and to high standards, but you're also an employer with relationships with employees, supporting their lives and families. You're thinking of yourself now as part of a community. Who are you as an organization in the community? There are lots of things you can do. And I think that companies often don't realize the amount of like their role and the power that they wield. And they can use this role in community as something more than just individual workers, as a whole entity that can support doing things different. But it did compel us to think differently about our role, like in society and in our community, who we are as an employer, not just as a company of individuals, how we want to be doing things differently, making things better, certainly not making things worse in the communities we work in. But again, going back to those buckets, it forces you to think about not just what you do ethically and professionally, but how you treat your workers, how you exist and operate within your community, environmental stewardship and your role in that, how you create value for your clients, not just do work for your clients. So again, I would say it's a mindset shift. More than anything. And you're not just thinking about how much do I pay staff? It's thinking about what's the full picture of how I compensate folks that work for our company, thinking about their whole lives and what they might need. And that's more than just money.
I think I could talk about the environmental angle because as an evaluation consultancy, we're delivering professional services, and we've often reflected on the B Corp certification as being difficult for us to show any kind of progress and movement when it comes to our environmental impact. It certainly has been a challenge for us because we are mainly service focused and we don't have a huge carbon footprint. But what it has done is compelled us to have these conversations about what is our environmental impact and our role in addressing the climate crisis. Even if we already have a small negative footprint in terms of not having a large carbon footprint, is there something that we can be doing to improve the situation through our work? And so we've been having those conversations more because of B Corp certification, because there is such an emphasis on the environmental side of things. And so before we had mostly said it's not within our ability to really take big steps. Now we're thinking differently about that. And we're thinking, what can we do? Even small things. How can we influence others who we work with, our clients, our subcontractors, our suppliers? How can we be part of larger movements towards greater sustainability in addressing the climate crisis?
Thank you for those great examples. And that's something I want to pick on a little bit. So you're still a business And the whole idea of the B Corp is showing that businesses can be a force of good. As an evaluation consulting organization, you need to be competitive. You're applying for contracts. How does the B Corporation make you more competitive or support your business?
I think it helps you be competitive in a number of ways. The process of becoming a B Corp does help you to truly align everything about your organization and to align it with your values. So it's not just what you do, but it's how you do what you do and align all of that with your values. It also identifies sort of the values you hold organizationally. And I think by having that B Corp certification, it enables like-minded potential customers to identify those values and see that it's more than, we don't just say we're this, we're living it, we're breathing it organizationally. And so it helps like-minded customers to seek us out and understand who we are and how we work. It has helped us get business in terms of the B Corp recognition being a signal to organizations we might want to work with. It also helps us to attract really amazing staff. There are people out there who understand what a B Corp is and want to work for a B Corp because they get what those values mean. There are people out there that might not understand what a B Corp is, but through the process of learning about Cathexis or other companies, might become familiar with it and decide either, hey, this really aligns with my values, I want to work for them. But it also indicates to people who might hold different values that maybe this isn't an organization we want to work for or work with. And so it helps to support identification of fit with our values. And so that we're working with clients that value the same things we do and enables potential employees to find us if they want to work for an organization with these values. By being a B Corp, it is a public declaration of our value to clients and to staff. It puts out front and center what our values are, and it helps us attract the kind of clients we want to work with and the kind of projects we want to be working on and the kind of people we want to be working with. So it's an attracting force in that way. The other value add for us has been being part of the broader B Corp community. There's a broad community of a whole lot of B Corps out there doing amazing things in amazing ways. And so we're part of a broader network of organizations who we've been learning from. And we've been learning a lot from those other B Corp organizations. We were inspired to do a reconciliation action plan from another B Corp. And we've just watched other B Corps do some pretty amazing things we had never thought of and got us thinking we can do that too. And so there's that value add piece as well, learning from the community of other B Corps.
Yeah, along with being part of that network. And so B Corp is three things. It's a certification, as Melissa has talked about. It's a network, a community of thousands of like-minded businesses around the world. And it's also a movement towards doing business differently. And along the lines of that network and community, it has brought in some staff development opportunities for us. We have seized opportunities that have come up through the B Corp network that seem they'd be relevant to our team and staff. And so it's opened us up to attending B Corp sessions where other B Corps have been talking about how they're advancing truth and reconciliation in their organizations, how they're advancing sustainability and action on the climate crisis in their organizations. And it's open to all of our team members. Like anyone in our organization can participate. And I think for me as a staff member, like that brings this great injection of a sense of purpose and fulfillment to my day-to-day to be connected with this broader network that's working on these hugely important issues and to see that is also valued and important to my organization. And that provides me with a tremendous amount of personal and professional value. So I think there's a lot around staff development and staff satisfaction that comes out of being part of the belonging in the network.
Those are great examples. One thing I'm curious about, Liz, is how does the day-to-day life in Cathexis in a B corporation, how is it different from your traditional workplace setting, even anyway?
Sure. I'll preface this with what my perspective is and what kind of organizations I'm familiar with. I've worked in a private sector consultancy settings in evaluation and applied research consulting for about 15 years. I started in a small private business that was doing evaluation and other research. Then I went to a nonprofit organization that did consultancy, and then back to Cathexis. So I've seen different work environments, and being on the supplier side of things where I'm working all the time with clients, I'm getting a little bit of a peek inside a lot of different organizations, a lot of different nonprofits and government departments and agencies. The way I would characterize Cathexis is fast-paced, dynamic, collaborative, and values-driven. A lot of organizations say that. But what that looks like at Cathexis and what I feel is different from other organizations I've worked in is that because we're so small and committed to our values, there is a real flexibility within our work environment that just allows you to be your full person because everybody knows you. We are so tight-knit working together every day. So you can be your full person and you have so much autonomy to be that kind of person you want to be at work. And so if that means you want to be really entrepreneurial and be the sort of person who like really pursues ideas and makes things happen, you can be that at Cathexis. People will put their energy behind you to help carry your ideas forward. I felt that within my first year at Cathexis. There were a number of things that I commented on and said, we could be doing this better. We could be doing this differently. And it was just like reception to doing things differently and making things happen. As a team and as an organization, we're challenging ourselves always to look for the purpose behind everything we're doing. Every project we're taking on, we're asking questions like, how does this project contribute to advancing equity or social justice or systems change or building local resiliency, things like that. Like we're always asking about the purpose behind it. And if that purpose aligns with our values and we're thinking really critically about the work that we take on, because we know it's so important to be doing the kind of work that aligns with our values, we make tough decisions. And when we see some work come our way that we think we can do, but it doesn't align with our values, it's so important to us to be doing work that makes our people feel really fulfilled and feel like it's really aligned with the kind of things that we want to be spending our days doing and the kind of larger things that we want to be contributing to. And that's really different from other organizations that will take on work just for the sake of doing work or to pad the bottom line. We won't do that at Cathexis if we see that something is fundamentally not going to serve us and it's not aligned with how we want to be working. We'll say no to it. We'll turn it away and look for something else that's much more aligned with what we want to be doing.
I also hear that you have a very exciting employee ownership initiative going on. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so one of the ways we wanted to live our values and something we were inspired to do through the B Corp community is to introduce an employee ownership program. We always had for many years a profit sharing program. Where we formally shared any profit made by the company with the employees that helped to generate it. But we wanted to take that one step further. And as we were thinking about sustainability of the company and the future of the company, we wanted it to live beyond its current owners, but also think about ownership as a wealth redistribution tool. We're a small company, but our employees contribute substantially to the growth of our company, its profitability, and its sustainability. And we wanted to ensure that staff have a share, not just sharing in the profit each year, but a real share in the ownership value. So have a stake in real ownership in the company. And so we did introduce an ESOP, an employee share ownership program, and we designed it in a really interesting way. We worked with a business advisor who helped us to design the ESOP so that staff could buy into the company, an ownership stake in the company, at a very accessible and reasonable price. So it wasn't inaccessible. They didn't need to put in lots of money to get something out. And from this point forward, we're aiming for 1/3 of the company to be owned by all of the employees across the company. That's something that we've just begun. We'll continue to work on it and tweak it, but it's something we're really proud of.
Congratulations. That sounds like such a great initiative that I haven't heard of elsewhere in our space. I'm not sure if there are organizations considering the same type of initiatives, but this is the first one that I am aware of. I have a question around the things that you're doing, how you're setting up the culture within the organization, that aspect of giving control, allowing people to show up as they are, have more of that flat structure, more of a voice, the benefits of the business. How do you think these decisions are promoting equity within the field of evaluation? And how do you think that in place contributes to your evaluation practice as a business?
I think you hit the nail on the head. Seeing yourself as an employer with relationships with individual humans, with whole individual human lives that are just as important as work, helps us to create a work environment and a work culture in which people can show up as that they are. Some people have family, some people have other obligations. You can never know all the many things that people have going on in their lives. And we've learned in part through COVID that we could work differently. Not everybody needs to come into the office all the time. We don't all need to start at the same time each day or finish at the same time each day. People can work different hours to accommodate different lifestyle, different needs, and different commitments in their lives. I think it enables, when people have more fulfilling personal lives, they become richer and more complete professional. Your personal life only contributes to fulfilling your professional life. They can't be separated. It's not one or the other. We bring both selves to everything we do. The way we have so much flexibility in where people work, how people work, when people work, how much people work, what people work on, helps them to accommodate their personal lives and gives us also a broader mix of people that work with us and for us. By having that flexibility, not everybody can come into the office 9 to 5. It's not going to work.
I'll add something here. A lot of our major changes and initiatives over the past 5 years of being a B Corp, and maybe going back further than that, but certainly in the time that we've been a B Corp and that I've been at Cathexis, a lot of these initiatives have really been employee driven. Employees at all levels have been encouraging and challenging Cathexis to make changes that make this a more equitable place to work and a place that advances equity. I can think of a few examples. I can think of a team member who really encouraged us to advance our learning in anti-oppression and racial justice and social justice. And so we started a reading group on that topic, and it just started out as a summer reading group, and it ended up evolving into something much bigger. Other staff members took that on, and it ended up evolving into an anti-oppression action plan for our entire organization. And so now we have that key guiding document that shapes the direction that we want to take when it comes to anti-oppression, equity, diversity, inclusion. And we've built out onboarding and training for new staff that is intentional around centering equity and justice in our evaluation practice, as well as in our business practices. And so when new staff are brought on into Cathexis, we really have a plan for taking them along and helping them to grow into the language that we're using around equity and social justice and helping them get up to speed on where we're at and the direction that we're trying to go as a company so that they can participate in conversations around how to continue to make Cathexis the kind of employer that does advance equity as an employer and as an organization and as evaluators working in the field and practice of evaluation.
What a great example of what happens when you provide voices and opportunities for staff and employees to lean on their strengths and passions. It sounds like you have a culture where staff are comfortable pitching ideas, taking initiative. Do you have feedback mechanisms or ways of measuring success of the initiatives that you implement internally as a business?
Yeah, we do. We're evaluators, so we develop, KPIs and hold ourselves to the same kind of measurement standards we do any organization we work with. So we do have a set of organizational KPIs that we meet and look at each month. Almost all of our entire team has a role to play in monitoring those KPIs, and they include client and team satisfaction and financial performance and thinking about workload. And so we have KPIs around all of these things that we look at monthly. It's not just financial performance that we're looking at organizationally. We're looking at this balanced set of organizational KPIs to keep ourselves on track. When we develop a strategic plan, we do every 3 to 5 years, develop a new strategic plan. We also build in success measures and KPIs to keep us on track, but also to celebrate what we're achieving and knowing when we're getting there.
And we don't just measure for the sake of measuring. We really have been trying to get at meaningful indicators, and we have conversations around whether these indicators are actually meaningful to us. Are they instigating the kind of action that we hope? Are they having any unintended impact on any of us? And we've had some conversations around this indicator doesn't feel good. It doesn't make us feel good. So we actually shifted. We cut it, got rid of it.
I'm thinking about for emerging evaluators joining your organization, what a great opportunity of learning, seeing you work through these processes and how that could contribute to their evaluation practice. It also sounds like leadership, good leadership, courageous leadership, radical leadership is very key to making these initiatives a success and this culture a success. Melissa, I'm wondering, what have you learned as a leader through this journey of the B Corporation?
I would say we initially became a B Corp because we thought we were already so well aligned with the values and principles of B Corps. We saw the Declaration of Interdependence, and it fundamentally means that businesses operate as if people in place matters. That's one of the core principles. And all of that really resonated with us, and we thought, we're doing this. This really aligns with who we are. And then as we went through the process, we learned there's so much more we could be doing. And so by becoming a B Corp and being an active part of the B Corp community, it's really helped us and inspired us to live up to those values even better. It helped us really actually live into the values in ways that we actually weren't before. And we didn't even realize until we saw how much improvement we were making and all of these great ideas that emerged that we were able to act on. And that's when we realized we thought we held these values. We thought we were doing so well, and we realized there was so much more. And then we started to do it, and we became so much more. It really forces you to make the time and space and set aside the resources for that important work as an organization, rather than always being caught up with getting the projects and doing the projects and working with the clients. It helped us to work on who we are as an organization, becoming more of what we wanted to be.
Melissa, you're going into my next question as we're wrapping this episode up, which is, what advice would you give to other business owners that are considering going through the B Corporation process?
So one piece of advice that I would give to an organization considering this is maybe start by looking at that declaration of interdependence and ask yourself whether it aligns with who you are organizationally and who you want to be. If it does, go ahead, have a look at the assessment, walk yourself through the assessment, see whether your business is already aligned. When you do that mock assessment, you'll figure it out. But yeah, the first step is really to think about that declaration of interdependence. It really speaks to what being a B Corp means. And if it fits, you'll know it.
I would echo all of that. And to go into it as an evaluator, being openly skeptical and curious about it and evaluate whether it seems right for you. Talk to other B Corps. It is so much a community and a network. You'll feel whether it's right for you. You'll feel in talking to other B Corps whether these are your people. So have those conversations with B Corps and go to the events that are open to the B Corp curious. See if you get that feeling that this network is aligned and I can see that it's going to help push me in the direction that I want to go and that I want to take my business. And I think you'll get the answer there as to whether it's like something you really want to seriously pursue. I'll note that when we started this journey, we were open to going either way with it. We wanted to try out the assessment and go through the certification process and see. We said we'd reevaluate it. And if we weren't getting value out of being part of this, then we would drop it. We wouldn't pursue recertification. And so we're always open to having that discussion. And we're always thinking critically about whether we're getting value out of it and whether it still feels aligned with who we are. And, if it stopped being valuable to us, that would come up in our conversations and we would make the decision to take another direction. 5-6 years in, it still feels really aligned, as Melissa can attest to, since she's putting us through the certification process again, the recertification.
Thank you so much, Liz. And also everything you've shared, in addition to the benefits you mentioned, I see it as a good strategy for retention and employee satisfaction.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is. That was actually something that surprised me a little bit about it. That's maybe a lesson I learned, was I didn't realize just how well recognized the B Corp certification is and just how many people would come to us looking for employment or some kind of opportunity with Cathexis and said they heard about us through the B Corp network, or they saw that we're a B Corp and that really spoke to them. And I was really pleasantly surprised to see that.
Thank you so much, both of you, for sharing so much about your journey. Is there anything else you would like to share before we wrap up the episode?
No, I think I'll leave it there. These were such incredible questions. And thank you, Maria, for inviting us to speak about our company and being a B Corp. One of the things about being a B Corp is that you are expected to talk about being a B Corp and to spread the word. It's not something keep under wraps. It's something to speak loudly and proudly about and to make people want to join the network. I would love to see more evaluation consultancies be part of the B Corp network, or to learn something from the B Corp movement that's going to advance the evaluation field.
I do want to say thank you very, very much. I think it's really great that you're making this space, Maria, for different companies to talk about the different ways that they work. I think it's really important for people to understand that not all companies are the same. We don't all work in the same way. Just like every individual has a different personality, different companies have different personalities. And by making this space for people to talk about evaluation and how they work, I think it gives the opportunity for people to figure out what's out there, see that there might be something different, and seek out what works best for them and the way that working works best for them. So thank you so much for creating the space to talk about that.
Thank you for the things you have shared, your generosity, and also for the work you're doing in creating workplaces that make evaluators feel valued. I think these efforts continue to challenge the status quo in our field and will only strengthen it. So thank you so much.